Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive where we're going to be tackling, I think, a pretty hot topic.
Yeah.
The idea of Canada and the U.S. merging.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some pretty interesting sources to unpack here. A very lively Reddit thread reacting to,
Yep.
Trump's Truth Social post about it,
Mm.
and a HuffPost article that kind of sets the stage.
Right.
So our mission today is to really explore what's fueling this conversation.
Mhm.
What are people hoping for? What are they afraid of? And what deeper issues are kind of bubbling up to the surface here?
Yeah, what I find fascinating is how this idea,
Yeah.
it seems so far-fetched, right?
Right.
But it really taps into these very real anxieties and aspirations
Yeah.
that people are having,
Yeah.
especially in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable.
It's not every day you hear about countries potentially merging.
Right.
So to kind of understand what's going on here, we need to start with Kevin O'Leary,
Right.
Mr. Wonderful,
Right.
who's been pushing this vision of a North American Union.
Right. And it's important to be clear about what he's actually proposing.
Yeah.
It's not just about the U.S. and Canada becoming one big country.
Right.
It's a deeper integration like what we see in the European Union
Okay.
with a common currency, totally free trade,
Wow.
and even a shared passport system.
He's aiming high.
Yeah, he is.
And he's made this argument that if you combine the economic and the military strength of both countries,
Mhm.
you create this superpower, this supernation on the world stage.
Right.
He even went on Fox News and boldly stated that no adversary would mess with it.
He did.
Ed.
It's a powerful image he's painting.
Yeah.
But we have to remember, he's coming at this from a businessman's perspective,
Oh, yeah.
not a politician's.
Right.
He has no authority to actually make this happen.
Exactly. And that brings us to Donald Trump,
Right.
who has been adding fuel to this fire by suggesting that Canada should just become another U.S. state.
He even likes to call Trudeau governor,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is a little irritating,
To say the least.
to say the least.
And the irony here is that Trump, who has been so critical of the European Union, is promoting a very similar model
It's true.
for North America.
Yeah. Another example of how this whole merger idea exposes some interesting contradictions.
It really does. And then to stir things up even more, he's threatened to increase tariffs on Canadian goods,
Yeah.
which hasn't really made him popular north of the border.
Not at all.
But here's where it gets really interesting. He supposedly invited O'Leary to Mar-a-Lago
Oh, wow.
to discuss this further.
I can only imagine those conversations.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, a recipe for unpredictability.
Oh, yeah.
It's really a convergence of these powerful personalities with
Yeah.
their own political ambitions and very real anxieties about the future.
Right.
And it's all playing out on a global stage.
Okay, so let's dive into the public reaction here, specifically this Reddit thread.
Yeah,
There's a real mix
it is.
of enthusiastic support to mockery to skepticism, even anger.
It really is. It's like the digital equivalent of a town hall meeting.
Yeah.
Just a jumble of voices and perspective.
It's like a digital town hall.
Yeah.
And this wide range of reactions is actually incredibly insightful.
I think so.
It shows us the differences between Canadians and Americans, but also the divisions within each country.
Absolutely.
It just shows how complex this is.
Right. It resonates with people on so many different levels.
So on the one hand, we have these comments like, Canadians yearn to be part of the greatest country ever, America.
Oh, wow.
But then we have this other gem, send Kevin O'Leary to Mar-a-Lago.
Haha.
If we're lucky, he'll hit Trump with a boat.
Wow. Talk about sarcasm.
They really capture that kind of polarized nature of the debate.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that even some of the comments that seem to support the merger,
Yeah.
they have this underlying sense of dark humor,
Yeah.
almost like a resignation to the absurdity of it all.
It's like, so if it's going to happen, we might as well laugh about it.
And beyond the jokes, there's some serious debate about O'Leary himself.
Mm,
Some people are impressed by his business success.
they are.
He must be smart. Look at all the money he has.
Right.
But others are less convinced Kevin O'Leary is a joke to most Canadians.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that people's perceptions of figures like O'Leary,
Yeah.
they're often shaped by their pre-existing political leanings
Oh, yeah.
and economic anxieties.
Yeah.
It's not just about his business acumen. It's about how people see him fitting in to this larger political landscape.
So let's go beyond the personalities for a sec and dig into some of the recurring themes
Okay.
and concerns that emerge from this Reddit thread.
Right.
One major worry is the loss of Canadian identity
Right.
and sovereignty, this idea that Canada would just be swallowed up.
Right.
by the U.S.
And this speaks to a broader anxiety about globalization
Yeah.
and the erosion of national identity in the 21st century.
Total.
People are grappling with what it means to be Canadian in a world where national borders seem increasingly fluid.
And then there's the economic aspect.
Of course.
Would a merger actually benefit Canada?
Right.
There's a lot of skepticism about this.
There is.
Many people are questioning O'Leary and Trump's motives.
Mm-hmm.
Some are even drawing comparisons to Brexit
Interesting.
and the European Union, wondering if a North American union would lead to similar complications.
It's a good analogy because it highlights those potential downsides of integration,
Right.
even when it's done with the best of intentions.
Right.
It reminds us that merging two distinct political and economic systems is incredibly complex.
It is.
And can have all these unintended consequences.
Right, and it's not just about economics and politics.
Yeah.
There are deep cultural differences between Canada and the U.S.,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to social values, healthcare, the role of government.
Yeah, people are worried about what would happen to those distinctly Canadian aspects of life.
So we've got this swirling mix of opinions and personalities, anxieties, and even some dark humor.
It's quite a mix.
Where do we go from here?
Good question.
What does all of this tell us about the current mood in both Canada and the U.S.?
I think what's most striking is this deep sense of unease that lies beneath the surface. People are grappling with a rapidly changing world.
Yeah.
This shifting balance of power and a growing distrust of traditional institutions.
Right.
This merger idea has become a lightning rod for all those anxieties.
But is this just a passing fad, or are we witnessing like a more profound shift in how people think about national identity?
It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But what's undeniable is that this seemingly absurd idea has tapped into very real anxieties and aspirations on both sides of the border.
Okay.
It's a conversation worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
Even if it makes us laugh or cringe along the way.
For sure.
It's definitely got people talking.
Yeah.
And one specific fear that keeps popping up is this idea of losing what makes Canada unique.
Right.
You know, would Canadian culture and values just be absorbed
Yeah.
into this American melting pot?
It's interesting because it's not just about like losing sovereignty.
Right.
It's about losing a way of life.
Exactly.
And it kind of ties into this bigger trend, this global pushback against globalization and wanting to preserve those local identities.
Absolutely. And it's particularly acute for a country like Canada
Yeah.
that shares such a long border and a close relationship
Right.
with a global superpower like the U.S.
It does.
It raises this question of, you know, how do you maintain your distinct identity
Right.
while also being part of the world and benefiting from that economic integration?
And the Reddit thread also really gets into those economic anxieties surrounding this merger idea.
Of course.
Would Canada actually benefit
Yes.
economically?
Right.
Some people argue, yeah, more opportunities, a stronger economy. Others are worried that it would make Canada more vulnerable
Yeah.
to U.S. economic downturns.
So let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
One argument in favor of a merger is the potential for increased trade and investment.
Okay.
O'Leary, for example.
Yeah.
He envisions a scenario where goods and services are flowing freely between the two countries,
Right.
just boosting economic growth.
But some people are skeptical about who would really benefit from that.
They are.
They worry that Canadian businesses would be outcompeted
Right.
by those larger U.S. corporations, leading to job losses, a decline in Canadian industries.
And that's a valid concern. You know,
Yeah.
It's not just about the size of the economy. It's about how those benefits are distributed.
Exactly.
You have to really examine the impact on different sectors.
Like what kind of sectors?
Manufacturing, agriculture, technology services, all these different pieces.
What about the Canadian dollar?
Oh, yeah.
Would it just disappear?
It's a big question.
What impact would that have on like cost of living inflation? Right. Even the ability for Canadian businesses to compete internationally.
These are all critical questions.
Yeah.
A common currency could simplify things like trade and investment.
Right.
But it also means that Canada loses control of its monetary policy.
Right.
It would basically be at the mercy of the U.S. Federal Reserve,
Yeah.
which could be problematic if the two countries face different economic challenges.
So there are some potential upsides,
There are.
but also some significant risks and uncertainties.
Right.
It seems like a lot of people are worried about becoming too dependent
Yes.
on the U.S. economy.
And that dependence is a real concern. You know,
Yeah.
if this were to happen, we'd have to establish some mechanisms to protect Canadian interests
Okay.
and ensure that the benefits are shared fairly.
Right.
Otherwise, it could lead to Canada becoming economically subservient to the U.S.
And it brings us back to that theme of distrust that we talked about earlier, in institutions and those traditional power structures.
Right. There's a sense that the people pushing this,
Yeah.
the politicians, the businessmen, the media,
Yeah.
they're out of touch with everyday people.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people feel that way.
That disconnect is a powerful force.
Yeah.
It fuels the skepticism, the cynicism that we see online.
People are questioning the motives.
Absolutely.
Is this really in the best interests of Canadians, or
Yeah.
is it just another power grab by the elite?
And speaking of the elite,
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion about O'Leary's role in all of this.
There is.
Some see him as this visionary entrepreneur who can make this happen.
Right.
Others see him as a self-serving opportunist,
Right.
more interested in enriching himself
Yeah.
than actually helping people.
And it brings us back to the importance of critical thinking
It does.
and media literacy, examining the sources of information,
Right.
considering those biases and motivations.
Absolutely.
And forming our own informed opinions.
It's crucial.
It is.
Especially in today's media landscape where it's so easy to get swept up in the hype
It really is.
or to fall prey to misinformation.
Yeah. We have to be discerning consumers of information and engage with a healthy dose of skepticism.
And critical thinking,
Yeah.
questioning our own assumptions and biases.
Yeah, because we all bring our own experiences and perspectives to this,
They do.
and those can definitely shape how we see things.
Absolutely.
So as we kind of navigate this complex and often contentious debate, it's important to approach it with a sense of curiosity,
I agree.
humility, and a willingness to listen to different perspectives.
It's about finding common ground,
Yeah.
even when we disagree.
Right, and part of that involves digging deeper into those practical implications.
Exactly.
A merger, moving beyond the grand pronouncements,
Yeah.
this political posturing, and get into those nitty-gritty details.
Okay.
Like, what would this actually look like?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the devil is often in the details.
Right.
So let's imagine for a second this merger actually happened.
Okay.
What are some of the concrete issues
Yeah.
that would need to be addressed?
Well, first of all, there's the question of governance.
Right.
Would Canada just become like a collection of U.S. states?
Yeah.
Or would there be some kind of federal structure that preserves a degree of Canadian autonomy?
That would be a huge sticking point.
Yeah.
Canadians are proud of their parliamentary democracy,
Yeah.
their system of government, which is quite different
Yeah.
from the U.S. presidential system.
Right. And how would we reconcile the different legal systems, different approaches to healthcare,
Right.
social welfare, different cultural values?
Those are all crucial questions.
Yeah. And then there's those practical everyday implications.
Absolutely.
What would happen to the Canadian dollar? Would Canadians have to pay U.S. taxes?
It's a big question.
What about cross-border travel
right.
and immigration?
Big issue.
And how do we ensure that Canadian voices are heard
Yes.
in a political system dominated by that much larger U.S. population?
You'd have to create mechanisms
Yeah.
to guarantee proportional representation for Canadians and protect their interests
Yeah.
within that new structure.
What about the cultural implications?
Oh, that's huge.
Canada has its own vibrant and distinct culture.
It does.
With music and literature and film and art.
Right.
Would that be able to thrive
Yeah.
in a merged North America, or would it be overshadowed by that dominant U.S. culture?
It's a valid concern. And it's not just about preserving Canadian culture. It's about ensuring that this new nation, whatever it looks like, embraces diversity.
Yeah.
And allows for the expression of multiple identities.
So it's clear that even if this were to happen,
right,
there'd be a lot of details to work out.
Countless details.
It wouldn't be easy.
No, it wouldn't be smooth or easy.
But there's something about this conversation that's strangely compelling.
There is.
What do you think that is?
It forces us to think outside the box.
Yeah.
To challenge our assumptions and consider different futures.
Right, like what if?
Yeah, what if?
It reminds us that the world is constantly evolving and we need to adapt.
We do.
To those new realities.
And it highlights the power of these ideas.
Yeah.
To spark debate, challenge the status quo, and ignite our imaginations.
It's got people talking.
It does, whether or not we agree with it.
Yeah.
You can't deny that it's got people thinking about the future in new and interesting ways.
That's valuable.
It is, because progress often starts with a spark of imagination.
Yeah.
A willingness to question how things are and a desire to explore new possibilities.
And those sparks can come from unexpected places.
So
Even seemingly outlandish ideas like this.
Absolutely.
So let's not dismiss them out of hand.
No.
Let's engage with them.
Yeah.
Explore them.
Let's see where they lead.
See where they lead.
Because even if they don't lead to the outcome we initially envisioned,
right,
they can still challenge our thinking.
Yeah.
Broaden our perspectives and help us better understand this complex world.
Speaking of understanding the world, we spent a lot of time analyzing the ideas, anxieties around this merger. But what about the human element?
Right.
How are real people actually reacting to this?
Yeah, let's shift our focus back to that Reddit thread.
Okay.
And look at some of those individual stories and experiences.
Yeah, because beyond the political debates, the economic arguments, there are real people whose lives would be impacted by this.
Exactly.
So let's listen to their voices and try to understand what this means to them.
What strikes me is the emotional depth of some of those comments.
Yeah.
People are sharing their hopes and fears, their memories, their experiences, their sense of identity.
It's a reminder that these aren't just abstract political concepts. They're issues that touch people's lives in very real ways.
Absolutely.
And as we delve into those personal stories, we might gain a deeper understanding of those complex emotions that are driving this whole debate.
So let's explore some of those individual voices and see what they can tell us about the human side of this merger idea.
Yeah. Going through those stories really, I don't know, just hits you in the feels.
Yeah. It's
like this isn't just some, political chess game.
It's not a game.
These are real lives.
Right.
Real people.
Real anxieties.
Yeah. So where do we land after all this?
It's a good question.
We've explored the personalities, the politics, the economics, the anxieties, the aspirations.
Yeah, the humor even.
Yeah, the humor even.
It's a lot.
It is. So what's the takeaway?
Yeah, what's the one thing you want our listener to walk away thinking about?
I think if I had to choose one key insight, it's that this whole conversation, it goes beyond just like this issue of a merger. It's about a world that's grappling with these big shifts in power, in identity.
Absolutely.
And just how we relate to each other across borders.
We're living in this time of unprecedented interconnectedness.
We are.
But also this resurgence of nationalism.
Right.
This yearning for those clear boundaries and definitions.
It's a weird paradox.
It is a fascinating paradox.
So what does this mean for our listener? Like, how does this relate to their everyday life?
I think it encourages us to really think critically.
About what?
About the information that we're consuming.
Yeah.
The stories that shape our understanding of the world.
Okay.
And the choices that we make as individuals, as citizens.
So it's about recognizing that even these big, crazy ideas can reveal deeper truths about the challenges we face.
They do.
And the paths we might take as a society.
And this whole deep dive has been a journey into those complexities.
It really has. And the journey doesn't end here. This is an invitation to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep engaging in this messy, fascinating, challenging process of understanding the world.
Absolutely.
So to wrap this up, I want to leave our listener with a final question to think about.
Okay, I like it.
If a North American Union did happen, what would be like the biggest challenges and opportunities? Not just for Canada and the U.S., but for you.
Oh, that's a great question.
As individual.
It brings it home,
Yeah.
Makes it personal.
So as you kind of continue to explore this topic, just remember that your voice, your perspective, and your engagement matters.
It does.
This isn't just about geopolitics.
Right.
It's about shaping a future that works for everyone.
A future we can all believe in.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes.
We hope it's given you some food for thought.
Some things to chew on.
And maybe even inspired you to do some exploring on your own.
Keep the conversation going.